our bestie Lennon said, there are decades where it feels like weeks have gone by, and there are weeks that feel like decades have gone by.
And I feel like the last week and a half has been a manifestation of that quote in our lives, because my question is not what has happened, but what has not happened.
No, especially Spotify Rap Day was quite a moment.
I love that last year Henry Kissinger died.
Yes! At the end of Spotify Rap Day.
Yeah, and this year there were people that were saying, oh, it's not as exciting. Last year Henry Kissinger died, and somebody said, like, the day's still young, and look where we are.
Yeah.
And also, if anybody doesn't know, Henry Kissinger, former American Secretary of State, huge war criminal.
Yeah.
Like, Blinken wishes he was as big a war criminal as him.
It's true. That is
BB
in Blinken's
wishes,
diary. Yeah.
BB wishes, God wishes.
Yes, George H.W. Bush wishes.
Wishes. Unless he's on a baseball game with Michelle Obama, then he's getting sweets. And he's getting sweets.
Well, in any case.
Oh, but we love decorum. Okay. Anyway, so
let's talk about 6 hours prior to Spotify Rap Day, though. Why don't you start us off, Taha? What happened right before Spotify Rap Day?
Okay. So South Korea had the most bizarre thing happen that nobody expected.
No one expected. No one's been go hard.
There used to be one Korea, and then after World War II, it was divided into North and South. South Korea actually had a military dictatorship for decades.
Right.
And the democratization movement has always been there, but in the 1980s, they succeeded.
Right.
So since then, South Korea has been not only a fierce Western ally, but also a stable democratic state with one of the biggest economies in the world. Please correct us in the comments on Insta if I'm wrong, but I think it's 10th biggest economy.
Wow, I would believe it. I mean, every other person that takes an East Asia trip that I know goes to South Korea, if not anywhere else.
And also, like, just the tech giants, right? Like Samsung, LG, Hyundai.
So much innovation exists in the Western world, period.
Although we can talk about the tribbles.
Of course.
The oligarchs of South
Korea
another day.
Okay,
now I can't go to South Korea.
No.
Okay, we can talk about them another day. But I think that South Korea, what happened was 6 or 7 hours before Spotify Rap Day. I like the Spotify Rap Day. Spotify Rap Day. The South Korean president decided, I'm democratically elected, but you know what'll be great? Martial law, which means he wants there to be a dictatorship. Martial law means that a lot of your constitutional rights are suspended.
Yeah, military assumes power.
The military has a lot more power. And a lot of people were saying that he did this because his family is being accused of corruption. And there was a lot of other things happening. No matter what the reason is, dude, what the actual fudge?
Yeah.
Like a stable economic giant.
Yeah, that is arguably a democracy.
Yes.
That then enters martial law. Why? Like why?
Why are we backsliding?
Yeah, you're so correct. Why would we backtrack when we have an established society that keeps people safe, which is the point of society?
Literally.
And instead implement martial law. Tell us about it, Taha.
Yeah, so I think he introduced martial law, which we're like, what the fudge, dude? You don't need to do this. You're a stable economic giant.
Yeah.
Why would you do this?
It's the last thing you want.
Exactly, right? Because it affects your economic situation, your democratic situation, your allyship with
your
other
bottom
countries.
line and your global relationships.
Absolutely. So he does this, but then what he didn't expect, I think, which you have to be, I'm sorry to say this to him, but like you have to be an idiot to not expect this, the backlash. I mean, South Korean society has very strong democratization movements, and the backlash was insane. I mean, we saw the leader of the opposition climbing the wall of the parliament to get in because army officers and police wouldn't let him in. Because in a martial law, army gets to do whatever they want.
Yeah.
Second, we saw a female parliamentarian in South Korea actually going up to a armed officer, asking him to move away, let her in, and when he wouldn't, he was pointing his gun at her. And she literally took his gun like this and just put it down. And and it was so insane because you really see like how fearless the reaction was.
How emboldened they are now.
Absolutely. And we saw like people dancing in the street to K-pop and making fun of the president, protesting through their dancing.
Yeah.
And I think because of all of this pressure, the coup attempt only lasted 6 hours.
Yes, exactly. Like, the world was watching, right?
Aren't you embarrassed?
Aren't you embarrassed?
This is really embarrassing, South Korean president.
The last time everyone was refreshing Twitter and any other social media websites that much was while there was a coup at the White House on January 6th.
No, literally. And I think we have to give our flowers to the South Korean people. That's inspirational.
Yeah.
Just how we saw Bangladeshi people
Yes.
earlier this year
Yes.
coming together with the students and workers and fighting back against their corrupt government.
Absolutely. I think it's incredible to see, like, people in countries that are oppressed, that have these larger Western imperial forces putting different pressures on them and suppressing them, and then having their internal governments also suppress their own voices. I think it's really inspiring to see them still fighting back, because in the Western world, oftentimes we're like, well, what are we going to do? You know, I'm one person. What am I really going to do about this? How will I really make a difference? I think it's really important because in moments where we feel like we have nothing in common with each other, the ruling class has won, right? They've won in being able to divide us. They've won in their strategy to divide and conquer. And so if we let up, if we let ourselves believe that we have no power and that they've won, well, they already have then, right? You know, that means that the reality won't change.
As the great working class hero and icon Beyonce once said, "You will break my soul.
You won't break my soul."
Just kidding. So what you're saying, Lababa, is really important because we can't let people break our spirits. So if students in Bangladesh who have no armor to protect them, who have no weapons to protect them, are charging against the military and police and saying, no, we are fighting for our freedoms.
Yeah.
When you see protesters in South Korea, women in South Korea, grandmothers in South Korea, young people in South Korea out there telling the military, no.
Yeah.
We refute what you're doing. We refuse this.
Yeah.
So then who are
You're taking back your power.
as people in privileged countries? We
Exactly.
have to do our part. And what I
Absolutely.
mean by our part is stay involved in your local politics, vote, and know what issues affect you.
Exactly.
Right? Read.
Don't just be the socialist that starts a book club, but if that's where you're at, get to reading, start your book club, and then figure out what it is that you have the tools to do about the issue that you've just come to
You heard it
understand.
here first, folks. Start a book club.
No, don't just start a book club. Maybe
Don't
that's our
just
merch.
start a book club.
Yeah,
No, honestly,
don't just start a book
the
club.
amount of people that pretended to read Angela Davis and Malcolm X during
and Desmond
Black
Cole.
Lives Matter civil rights movement, which is ongoing, obviously, but like the
especially after
resurgence,
George
specifically
Floyd,
after the state murder of George Floyd,
Yeah.
is crazy to me because I'm like, you all definitely did not read Davis or Malcolm X, because if you did, you would understand the intersection of the freedom and Black liberation and Palestine.
Exactly.
And I say this to the brown people as well.
Of course.
That have anti-Blackness and espouse
Yes.
that. They have also not read their liberation properly because it's interlinked with Black people.
Absolutely. Tell me about Punjab. Tell me about partition. Tell me about Palestine and Ferguson and how they're connected. You haven't even read Angela Davis's 150-page book on Ferguson and Palestine? Come on.
Yeah.
Come on.
Haven't.
It's a manifesto.
Okay. Well,
it is okay.
It is
okay. No, sorry. It is okay. But go read it.
Or
it's quick.
If you want us to do a little summary of
Oh my
it,
God.
let us know in the comment section on Instagram. And
I would love to do a review, a little recap, a little TLDR. 100%.
Okay.
So, Taha, on the topic of, uniting, fighting back, having more in common with each other than not, let's talk about the Syrian people.
I mean, before we even start talking about what happened in Syria, I think we have to honor and respect the Syrians' people long fought struggle and desires for freedom and independence from the brutal Assad dictatorship and the Assad family. And I think that whether we want to intellectualize what's going on, we have our own takes. There's Russia involved, Iran, United States, Turkey, obviously NATO powers. You have ISIS, you have Israel. All of that is good for us to debate, but right now we need to first congratulate the Syrian people. People don't realize the brutality of the Assad regime. So for anybody that doesn't know, Bashar al-Assad and his family has basically ruled Syria for decades.
Right.
And they were so brutal. First, his dad was in power. Then the son, Bashar al-Assad, was the dictator.
Right. Don't we love it when families gain power and then stay in power and then make sure their lineages stay in power and completely fuck over the actual country's people?
Don't we love it?
Don't we love it?
Don't we love it? Honestly, I hear you. I think this is a really big problem in a lot of countries in the world. This legacy, dynasty, dictatorial politics.
Authoritarian regime.
Absolutely. So basically, when the Assad regime fell recently, a few days ago, and Bashar al-Assad cowardly fled to Russia, you saw freedom fighters and protesters break into the prisons to free the innocent people. And they went to one of the main, I hope I'm not mispronouncing it, but Sidanaya prison.
Okay.
If I am mispronouncing it, I apologize. Prison in Syria. And there's like layers and layers underground. And when they open some of those prison cells, little toddlers come out because these women that were held there were assaulted. So they gave birth there.
Yeah.
Then we see women and men coming out and saying, oh, what's going on? So they had no news available to them, and they still thought that Bashar al-Assad's dad was still in power.
Oh my goodness.
So imagine, I mean...
You're in a completely different world.
And I think it's so messed up because you think about how things change so fast.
Right.
So if you didn't know that there was like new sort of cameras, updates,
oh my God,
texting, like even if you look at the last 10 years, we've changed so much from clicking on buttons to like tap.
Even the last 30 years,
right?
like from corded phones being innovative to like two little buds in my ears.
And some of these
picking
people
up my
have
voice.
been in that prison for decades, but also with no access to information. So their rehabilitation into society is going to be really difficult. So my thoughts and prayers are with the Syrian people, with everybody there that has fought so hard, and I wish them nothing but the best. Yes, there are a lot of forces involved, and it is a very complicated situation, but that doesn't mean that we need to come in with our colonial takes sitting in the West and say like, oh, what should Syrian people do? My hope for Syrian people is they're able to unite and put forward a beautiful Syrian identity in front that is so beautiful. And I think people forget that Syria has one of the biggest secular Arab population. Syrian secular identity is very integral, and I really hope it's maintained.
Absolutely.
But we are rooting for you, Syria. We're rooting for the Syrian people, and we're hoping that you know, that is something that they will get to decide.
Absolutely. The people of Syria themselves get to decide what their liberation looks like, and that's what everyday people deserve, right? To be able to have that autonomy. It's important, especially when we're talking about, you know, one of the oldest standing societies in the world. Absolutely. Like Damascus is one of the oldest cities in the world, standing for what, 11,000 years now?
Wow.
Incredible. Multiple millennia. And not many other cities. There are like 2 other cities that can say the same thing, I think.
And Syria is so diverse. I mean, there's Syrian Christians, Armenian refugees who settled there after the Armenian genocide. Sunnis, Shias. Like,
there's a phenomenal queer culture. Like if you have ever read Danny Ramadan's memoir, Crooked Teeth, I highly recommend people read it. But that was the first time I read about like stories of actually living in Syria, and I think it's just such a beautiful culture that deserves to be uplifted more than the oppression and war torn, you know, headlines that we're seeing for so long.
So talking about this, Lubaba, I know that you wanted to talk about what Israel has done with the power vacuum that has been left in Syria after Bashar al-Assad fled to Russia.
I was at St. Levant's concert on Monday in Toronto, which phenomenal concert. It was a beautiful spiritual experience. If any of you were there, please let us know, because maybe we ran into each other. Anyone that was cool was there. You know, like, I knew he was going to pull someone out. I just thought it'd be Kehlani, but it was Nemesis in the end. Mashallah. It was a phenomenal, like, celebration of Palestinian identity, resistance, and, like, joy, art, culture, and solidarity. Phenomenal concert. Before St. Levant even goes on, we get news that Israel has started its largest aerial bombardment in history, like shooting bombs into Damascus, parts of Syria, in order to create this Israeli buffer between Syria and Lebanon, separating these two allies of Palestine, and creating this buffer of control that they plan to maintain as a stronghold. And this is part of, you know, like this is, and I think this, I mentioned, like, this is their largest aerial bombardment to date. And it's not like it hasn't been terrible before. It's not like these, you know, attacks have not been devastating before. It's not that they haven't been, you know, committing ecocide before, right? But the Zionist entity has continued to outdo itself. And now they've gone so far as to establish this military tactic of creating a buffer zone where they infiltrate and they, you know, maintain a power stronghold after this vacuum has been allowed to come out, and where they plan to undergo their new military operations here onwards.
No, I'm fine. I honestly think it just makes me really sad because we're in this situation where we're seeing a country and its people fight so hard for their freedom. You have Israel coming in and bombing like airports.
Bombing one of the oldest cities in
the world.
Civilization,
and
yeah.
I think, like, we all care about history and we all care about protecting heritage sites. And I mean, forget all of that. I mean, like, human life.
Exactly.
Right? And it's absolutely disgusting. And I really hope, I mean, we can only hope because the world has decided to just let Israel do whatever they want. But I think this...
Parts of the world.
Yeah, exactly, actually. You're right. The global south is with Palestine and with people oppressed everywhere.
Yeah.
But I think it's really important that you mentioned that what has happened there, because we will hope that this can be reined back in and Syrian people get to have autonomy over their land, because Israel has occupied more of the Golan Heights now.
Yes.
The Syrian part of the Golan Heights as well. And they're trying to create that buffer, as you said. So really wishing Syria all the best.
Yeah, the Syrian people deserve a semblance of peace.
And talking about the news that has transpired, as we say, what has not happened, the ceasefire in Lebanon, between Israel and Lebanon, Israel has violated it, God knows, over 50 times at this point.
Yeah. But this is why so many people weren't even that excited when the ceasefire deal was reached, because we were like, oh, how long will this deal last, right?
I mean, we obviously want the ceasefire.
Of course.
But it's like Israel has proven time and again to be an unreliable actor on the international stage.
Yeah. And so how do we trust that?
Yeah. And then even internally in Israel, I mean, Benjamin Netanyahu had his trial date.
Right.
Literally so much has happened.
So much has happened.
He was at court for his trial, and then there were like two sets of protesters outside.
Right.
One that were pro Netanyahu, that were like, yeah, this is all a witch hunt.
Free my guy.
Other, which like, okay, if that's the hill you want to die on, boo, do your thing. And then the other set of protesters were like, no, he should go to jail for corruption and also for not getting the hostages back.
Right.
But in the predominant Israeli discourse, there was no conversation except for maybe a handful of people about Palestinian life and continued oppression of people in Gaza and the West Bank. How Kamal Adwan Hospital is being bombed. I mean, it's absolutely tragic.
Yeah, the people are not just collateral damage.
You also had really salient points about what's been happening to one of Israel's biggest allies, France, recently, where the French government collapsed. So Emmanuel Macron, as we all know, as you were saying, they had snap elections where Jean-Luc Mélenchon and his coalition of left-wing parties won. And historically, in French politics tradition, when a coalition or a party wins the most votes, they get to the prime minister is selected from that coalition or that party. Emmanuel Macron, as the president, decided to say, oh, precedent, tradition, what is that? And he just selected like a right-wing guy as a prime minister. Shocker, only within a few months, that government falls, collapses. So now I hope
on Spotify Rap Day.
Really?
Yeah, it was on Spotify Rap Day.
Oh, I did not know it was on Spotify
France and The Hague.
Spotify. Sweden. What are you doing? Yeah, I mean, like Sweden, like IKEA, H&M, Spotify, Zara Larsson.
We gotta talk about that. Comment below if we should do an episode on Sweden.
Yeah.
I got public health things to say too.
Yes. But I think like it's really interesting to see how we've time and again talked about this, but time and again we see politicians that pretend to be center-left, like Macron, are actually center-right. Right. And they would rather pick right-wing over left-wing, even when the left-wing has won. So let's see what happens in France. We're wishing, obviously, everyday working people the best.
I would love to talk about how France is a really great case study for a lot of people, especially when it comes to strategizing our community mobilization, because they know how to count their wins. And that's something that the left, that working class movements need to do more consistently, I would say. Because we have little wins. And sure, they might be incremental, or they might not be, we might not get the whole pie, but we win a slice. We deserve to feel the accomplishment of that slice, right? We deserve to recognize that win, recognize what it is that we defended and fought for, and recognize also how we are building on that. What worked?
Yes.
Because we need to also recognize what worked in order to develop strategy, not just what didn't work and what do we need to do better, but what did we achieve? What was effective? How do we do that on another scale, in another context, in another case, so that we can keep winning globally and that the working class movement across the world has a fighting chance against these oppressive ruling imperial powers, right? When I think of counting our wins in Ontario, for example, I think of the education workers that went on strike with CUPE about 2 years ago. Yeah, about in 2022. Like we were around then we were talking about a general strike. Like people were really like, oh my God, is it going to happen? Right? And within 3 days, the Ford government was rescinding its legislation, and all these education workers, they got a better deal, and the working class movement in Ontario was reinvigorated. And so we need to make sure that we take those wins, we allow them to reinvigorate us, we journal about them if we need to, but we commemorate them, we remember them, and we learn from them going forward. We're seeing an uprising amongst working class people again now with the Canada Post strike happening in Canada. So for our US friends, if UPS went on strike or other postal services went on strike, this is what you would have. Basically, Canada Post is on strike. Postal workers are predominantly temporary or short contract workers. They have very precarious working conditions. And this is the precedent that our entire postal system is based on and relies on, which is ridiculous. It's so insecure, right? It's so precarious. But I think what's incredibly important to remember in this moment, we need to stand in solidarity with postal workers. Postal workers have gone on strike before, and when they did go on strike, they won not only for themselves, but they won maternity leave for every worker in Canada. And maternity leave is such an essential part of being able to gauge and to be able to measure the quality of life in a country. If you have good maternity leave policies, then it's more and more likely that your workers and that people in your society and your country have a better quality of life. If life was only hard, who would want to live, right? So in order to have a society functioning, in order to have a labor force, in order to have workers doing anything, period, you need to be able to color their life in other ways through the things that are essential to them, such as their workplace. That means we need vacation days, we need adequate benefits, we need maternity leave, we need competitive salaries, and we need supportive work environments in order for people to not only accept that they have to go to work, but actively do it and come back and keep going. That's how you retain people. That's a sustainable society. And so at the end of the day, the workers are the ones who have the power in order to be able to make a change.
Bringing it all back, the struggle of the working class people, of people who've been oppressed against the ruling class.
Yeah.
And talk about an Italian plumber.
Sorry to interrupt, but somebody just got his birth chart.
We've had his birth chart all day, babe. We've been there. You're late.
But it's not that Luigi. It's actually Luigi Mangione, who was recently arrested.
Suspected of
alleged shooter of the United Health CEO Brian Thompson, where Luigi allegedly shot Brian Thompson to death in New York, and that's another thing that has happened recently. I mean, as I'm saying this, I'm still shocked that all of this has happened, and more has happened
in less than 10 days.
Yeah,
that's wild. Because also, Luigi Mangione is such an interesting case study because the man fully took a bus from Pennsylvania, was ratted out by someone at the McDonald's there, and when the police found his backpack, it was full of Monopoly money. He had clearly, this man is trolling the law enforcement, right? This man is trolling corporate executives, and he's trolling enforcement in America.
More than trolling corporate executives,
exactly.
I would say.
Yeah,
okay.
A little more than trolling, but, even after said incident is...
Troll! Guys,
Monopoly money, defy, defend, dispose on the bullets. Some are saying that he 3D printed his gun all of these things.
We are not in the business of saying whether Luigi Mangione did something that was right or wrong.
Yeah.
We will let the court of public opinion and the courts decide that.
Yeah.
But what we're not going to do here is to pretend that this was a lone instance, this came out of nowhere. No, guys. The economic conditions that have been created for people in the United States, where there is mass poverty, where people are dying with medical debt,
and
people are alive with medical debt,
and keep being denied their claims even when they have insurance.
Absolutely. Like, in the entire industry, I recommend that you guys also read up on this, and we're happy if you want us to do a whole video on this. We're actually happy to do this. Let us know in the comments.
Privatization.
Yeah, and specifically in the US, and you will see basically so many people, even in Ben Shapiro, who is a right-wing YouTuber podcaster, he posted this video on his YouTube saying the left loves to celebrate murder. And
they're
so
evil.
So evil. Ooh, ooh baby. But basically, before Eggs Benny did his, I'm going to call it Eggs Benny. That's an insult to brunch. Before Ben Shapiro did his episode, about this United Healthcare CEO being shot, I think it's important.
You're such an icon.
Listen.
I didn't even understand until you said Ben Shapiro again. Sorry, continue.
No, that's okay. So,
my guy, Eggs Benny.
Eggs Benny, what an insult to brunch.
Journal about that tonight.
Yes. So basically, something that Ben Shapiro thought all of his right-wing audience was going to be like, yeah, the left is awful. Actually, all of his right-wing audience started commenting saying, Ben, you're out of touch.
Right.
Whether you vote for Trump or Kamala or Trump or Biden in the past, like, we all suffer from predatory healthcare insurance companies.
Yeah. Healthcare is not a right or left issue. Healthcare affects us all.
It's a human issue.
Exactly. And so if our humanity is what connects us at the end of the day, if this is what this transcends right and left-wing politics, it's about us as individuals and it's about class. It's about the working class.
And I think, Lubaba, you were saying something, and also one of the content creators I follow on TikTok, Crutches and Spice, she also said that it's actually good that Luigi Mangione is not left-wing.
Right.
Or not that we know of, right?
Yeah.
That he's not left-wing. And they were saying that it's actually important, again, reiterating that point, healthcare affects everyone.
Yeah.
So when people like Luigi Mangione, who are white, privileged, come from a rich family, and they're taking these type of steps, it only tells you how much is bubbling under the pressure in the rest of the populace. So I hope that steps are taken not just to demonize people who are pursuing vigilante justice, which is a whole
and not just
and
not just create greater enforcement and policing around corporate executives and such also.
100%, because that is not the solution. The solution is to actually give people
affordable
healthcare options.
Exactly.
And definitely universal.
Absolutely. People need access to their basic services. At the end of the day, it's just about the necessities and whether or not you can achieve them. It's that simple.
Lubaba, I feel it is that simple. And Lubaba, I feel like we have so much more to talk about. Because, guys, we haven't even covered 50% of what else has happened in the world.
Yeah, and it's only been 21. Pluto has only been in Aquarius for 21 days.
And with that, we will leave you with this episode, and we encourage you to follow us on Instagram at The Third Take Pod.
Yeah. Let us know what you want us to talk about next.
Yeah.
Because we have lots to say, but which take do you want?
Yeah. Thank you. Bye.